Bonjour, je suis not manly, ici le voyage d'espace je ne sais quoi. This is part 6 where we are tackling Gilly as a light snack after Eve. Gilly is still tiny at 66 kilometers on average and a surface gravity of less than 0.01 Gs. It might be a larger rock, but it's still a tiny rock. It has a 17-hour day, and it rotates around Eve every 15.5 Kerbin days with a pretty wild inclination, just like in stock Gilly. So make sure you watch for that when you get out here. Delta V from low Eve orbit. It could be as much as 2.1 kilometers per second, but the capture can be as much as 1,100, 1.1 kilometers per second, depending on where you hit it. So watch where you hit it. If you can get out here, you get a half-decent science multiplier. Landing, of course, is pretty easy. Kerbal EVA packs could make it. It should be a pretty okay mid-career target once you get past Midlands. The problem is that low gravity is just forget about rovers. Very small target with wild inclinations, so approaching it could get pretty expensive, and there are only 3 biomes, just like stock Gilly. When we last left our heroes Chris and Roberta Lynn Kerman, they were in low Eve orbit, getting ready for a maneuver to rendezvous with the main mission craft. There's that gorgeous Eve cloud cover above there. We have just enough Delta V to complete these maneuvers and then deorbit this craft so we don't leave it stranded up in orbit. Mostly it's going to be an inclination change, as you're seeing here, with only a little bit of ejection out. There's the main mission craft where Julie Kerman has been waiting patiently for about 15 or so days. Fortunately, I don't have a life support add-on installed, so these guys could just hang up here. You know, they love Eve, they love space. We get out to do the approach, and, well, we line up here. Not so bad. I decide to send Roberta out first. Only problem is, when I went to eject her, well, you get to see. Oh boy, Kraken drives! Oh, and we lose one of the solar panels. Fortunately, we didn't need that one. So now we gotta get Chris out there to stop that craft. Come on, Chris. Oh boy. So Roberta takes her science, and she gets off of there. Well, so much for the Kraken drive. Let's get back aboard the main mission craft there. Load that science aboard that RGS probe core. Plenty of storage space on there for all the science data. Because we have that RGS up there, we could take 2 copies of everything, just like we brought 2 copies from the surface of Eve, and like we've done before out at Moho. Finally, we get Chris out of his pod, he takes his copy of the science, and gets out to the main mission craft. We've seen all this before. There we go. All aboard there, Chris and Roberta. And we have just enough Delta V to deorbit this lander craft. We're not going to need it anymore. Let's make sure there's no science aboard there, make sure no one's stowed away aboard there. And with a tiny bit, 40 meters per second, we're able to get it back into Eve's atmosphere. So we get to give this craft back to Eve for her generous bounty of science. Look at that, Mach 23. I believe re-entry speeds on the real world are about Mach 25, so hey, this is pretty close. Look at that. This craft is not going to survive, but that's the whole point. We just don't need it floating around up in low Eve orbit taking up space junk. Eve has been generous to us, so we don't want to pollute her local space. Even that fairing shell is not going to make it. It has a pretty impressive heat tolerance, but it is not tolerant enough. There we go. And that's the end of that. So we get ready for our ejection out to Gilly. First I try getting out to Periapsis where it was just under 2 kilometers per second. The problem was to capture there, it was going to be in excess of 1 kilometer per second, and I did not have the Delta V for that in my current stage. So instead I waited for Gilly to get up to Apoapsis, where it cost only a little bit more out to eject, but a lot less to insert. At the same time, I prepared the Eve refueler craft to rendezvous with us over at Gilly. Ended up being a much less expensive bird, mostly plane changes, not too bad. There we go. Ejecting out from low Eve orbit. I end up doing the ejection straight away. We've got Delta V to spare. Okay, and now we're lined up. Hey, not bad at all. I get a very high apoapsis so that Probodopodine rove mate has a chance to find any anomalies on the surface of Gilly. You may have seen this before in Kerbal Space Program. Gilly was just as tough to get at. Here comes the Eve refueler. Not bad at all. Okay, yeah, not bad, only 350 meters per second to capture there. So here's the main mission craft on its approach to Gilly. I think I can barely see it. I think that's Gilly up there. End up time warping ahead. Oh, yep, there it is. There is Gilly. But we're not in Gilly's sphere of influence yet. It has a very, very tiny sphere of influence, even when we are up this close. We aren't going to be able to do any CurbNet scans for quite some time there. When we do get in there, though, it is almost instantaneous. Oh, look at that. Oh, turn that scanner off. There's the anomaly. We got pretty lucky there on that pass. We'll just mark that. Gilly will only have one anomaly, and it'll most likely be one of the random monoliths. Okay. Let's zoom. Yeah, that is just as much as we can scan of Gilly. We gotta be pretty high up to get the whole surface. We still only seem to have 3 biomes, just like stock Gilly. In fact, if I didn't know better, I'd say that biome map looked pretty familiar. Here's Roberta Lynn Kerbin getting high space science above Gilly. I open up our scanner. I just want to see what kind of resources we have up at Gilly. But first thing I want to know is how high we have to be. So we have to be polar orbit just under 150 kilometers up. We're not going to do that right now. We're just going to make sure that we rendezvous with the Eve refueler first and fill up the tanks. Rendezvousing above Gilly is just stupidly easy. As long as you can capture here, you can almost brute force these maneuvers. Hey, that's almost a polar orbit right there. I wonder if we can get the main mission craft to rendezvous with the refueler. It might save us a step. Okay, 1.4 kilometers. We'll settle for that for now. I end up getting silly and I try doing the fine adjustments from the refueler. Unfortunately, that messes up my orbit. I'm no longer in a polar orbit. We'll fix that later on, though. It was more important to get nice and close to the craft, because we are pretty low on Delta V on this stage. It's now up to Julie Kerman to fill up the tanks on the main mission craft. Now, I try attaching it to one of those center tanks and we do the whole transfer, but EVA transfer still messed up the transfer and I had a fuel load balancing problem I had to fix later. But that's okay. Oh, yeah, we're starting to lose it. You can see that maneuver marker moving away from us. As long as we keep our thrust low, we should be okay. So anyway, we're now in a polar orbit. We try to do our scan and... Didn't I remove rational resources from my install? If you have the normal install of rational resources with the JNSQ Planet Pack, you're going to see a very, very different kind of resource distribution. But that's okay, we're not looking for resources for sure, we want to know where that monolith is. Oh, we have just entered low space, so we're going to get some quick low space science. Where is that object? We know. Oh, well, there it is. Just near the bottom, just a little bit to the right, near the Kerbal alarm clock. Oh, get back there. Come on, get back there. Yep, there it is. Little black dot. You can see the monoliths and other objects before you see any surface scatter. So that was a pretty tiny thing, but we found it. It was actually considerable distance away from our target marker. But hey, that's why you keep your eyes peeled on these approaches. I'm going to try to thrust a little closer to that object. Right now we're nowhere near it. Okay, I'm applying gentle thrust here because I've got that fuel load balancing problem I gotta watch out for. That depression looks pretty safe, but for some reason I don't end up in a really flat area. Oh well, it's not so bad. Gilly's gravity is so ridiculously weak. Oh, there we go. Experimental aircraft engines. If only we had some parts sitting in that particular tech tree node. Well, there's the monolith there. And really, with Gilly's weak gravity, all I gotta do is tell Chris to keep pointing this thing straight up, and it should stay straight up. We'll just try to find the top of a ridge or something. Notice how I'm pointing him radial out. When you're in surface mode, radial out is always out from the center of the body in question. So that's basically telling Chris to point straight up. Now all we gotta do is touch down. I said all we gotta do is touch down. Come on. There we go. I think we're sliding down the hill a little bit, but hey, that's okay. We send out Roberta to go get some surface science. She might be a good 30 meters above the surface, but apparently she can still get surface samples off of the edge of the command pod. Hey, go figure. That's okay, we gotta get 2 of these, remember? Yep, there we go. We'll store the other one up in the RGS. Alright, we're done in the Highlands. Next step is to send Julie Kerbin out to the monolith and plant a flag near it. We'll be able to come back to this later on. Look at that. You know, this color of the surface reminds me very much of the surface of Eve. Makes me wonder if Gilly in this edition of it is actually a former piece of Eve. Hey, I don't know. Maybe they could change the biome blurbs or the science flavor text to reflect that. Touching down in the Midlands, we're going to get some Midland science. Try as I might, I could not find any rocks that I could take apart with a pickaxe. If there are regular surface objects that can be picked up off of Gilly in stock, please let me know in the comments. Maybe we can let the JNSQ team, the Galileo team, see about putting those things back on the surface of JNSQ Gilly. The lowlands does look a little different, a little darker, maybe a little redder, I suppose. But we do touch down on the Midlands. And there we go. Much saner 5 degrees slope there. Look at that. Gilly is just as rough as I remember it, just the color. Oh, hey, check it out. Eve is just down there. Unlike Eve, the surface temperature is a much more comfortable minus 48 C. A little chilly down there. Surface gravity being ridiculous, of course. Pardon me, minus 88 C. But it's a dry cold. Yeah. You wouldn't want to live here. Nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live on Gilly. So I plan on ejecting out here. I figured we were done on Gilly, but then I got the bright idea. Look at all this Delta V I've got. Let's see if I can get a landing at one of the poles. I take a crack at the North Pole, actually. There we go. You can barely see it. It looks like a pinpoint on the top of the pole. And as we approach it, we can see one of those telltale terrain seams. But this North Pole is nothing like the North Pole, the really tall object we found on the surface of Midlands. Midlands might be an unusual mistake compared to the rest of these bodies. I would have expected Gilly would have had one of these things too. We do find a valley that we can land our craft in, just between 2 rows of peaks. Look at that. Touchdown, but oh, we're sliding. We're sliding. Hold on to that, Chris. Keep pointing radial out. Let's wait till this craft settles. It's still the Highlands, but that's okay. Just landing at the pole is a treat in itself. Come on, settle out, craft! Oh, thank goodness. There we are, our last landing on the surface of Gilly. In a bit we'll send out Julie Kerbin to go up to the peaks. In the meantime we'll try one more time to see if we can pluck something off the surface. This smaller rock, no, it doesn't come up as anything special for me to pick up. Nope, not at all. Well, all we can do now is go up to the pole and see what we can do about planting a flag up there. It might not be a really tall peak like at Midlands, it might not be as dangerous as Midlands, but it still has one of those terrain seams, so be careful to stay out of that. Julie touches down on the North Pole, and look at that gorgeous shot of Eve in the distance. It does not get any more north than this. The postal code for the North Pole, by the way, is H0H0H0, in case you were wondering about that. Alright. The pole's doing wonderful things with those camera shots. That is our last landing. I end up taking off parallel to Eve on our ejection. There we go. Bye bye, Gilly. Be the last time we'll get to see you for a while. Once again, the pole's given us some lovely panning shots. Look at that. With our mission finished, it is now time to ditch the science kit. We no longer need it. We set our periapsis above Eve into the atmosphere so we can drop this kit into it. Another sacrifice for our beautiful mistress so we don't lose anything else. So we appease the goddess of Eve. I get out to a really high lazy orbit, and about a year later we do our ejection out to Kerbin. This is not the most efficient way to do it, but that's okay, we have Delta V for days. And there's our approach to Kerbin. A pretty easy approach compared to coming back from Moho. Bye bye Eve, bye bye Gilly, we'll be seeing you. Welcome back to Kerbin. We're going to do this gorgeous approach. I ended up doing this landing in 2 parts again because of the ocean glitch, so I could save it as one good, gorgeous shot. Here come our triumphant heroes, Chris, Roberta Lynn, and Julie Kerbin. Do the same thing we did before. We end up doing, what was that? Anti-normal? Yeah, so we could separate away from the craft and still get to enjoy a good fireworks show. And who doesn't love a good fireworks show after a 2¼ year mission? Look at that. After that, our trio of Kerbals touch down safely and bring back 18,000 science! Enough for that last part and then some, but we landed right on top of a Duna transfer window. Well, no rest for the Kerbals. We'll get on our way to Duna in the next episode. Until then, I'm not Manly, fly safe.